There's been a lot of interesting storylines coming out of Mets spring training from pitchers who we did not expect to step up, from guys who were not even on major league rosters last year contributing. Juan Soto continues to ball out. Old friends like David Wright, my personal favorite New York Met of all time, shows up, is at camp teaching the young guns. So we've seen everybody from Johan Santana to the current captain, I would say, David Wright, getting ready to pass that ball on to Francisco Lindor, hopefully, who did an interview with WFAN. We have a battle for the final roster spot in regard to the New York Mets. The guys over at SNY are going to be discussing that. Over on the Mets pod, they're going to be discussing a pitcher who was pretty much cut last year, making significant contributions this spring. Does it mean anything in the grand scheme of things? Well, I'll give you guys my perspective all on that next on MetCast. What's going on, Met fans? As always, I am Rain. If you're enjoying this content, smash that like button, hit that sub button, turn on those notifications so you never miss an upload on any Mets content. And it is a good time right now to be a New York Mets fan. Yes, we have some major injuries. The Francisco Alvarez situation with his hand, Sean Manaea being out. You have Frankie Montas that's going to miss significant time, but things are still looking in a positive direction. And that is a big thank you to a guy in David Stearns, who has built depth throughout this rotation like I don't know if I've ever seen before. And I was very skeptical coming into the off season. You saw them go out and sign a guy like Channing Griffin. You see guys like Max Kranick fully developing, or finally, excuse me, developing, throwing that hard fastball at 96 miles per hour, which he did not sit at throughout his entire career. But the guys over on One Mets Pod had some stuff to say about Canning Griffin, what I thought was really interesting. Let's take a look.
And the thought is, when you look at Canning, because you highlighted it, Joe, that he was completely fine in 2023. Like, made 22 starts, 4.32 ERA, and keep in mind how bad the Angels organization is as a whole.
That's
so
for sure.
Kind of, grade this on a curve a little bit. But the things that stand out to me, Joe, are he was striking out about 10 batters over 9 in 2023.
That's great.
That inexplicably drops to 6.8 in 2024. This guy's 28, 29 years old. Like, that's not like a 34-year-old that the stuff was just gone. Mm-hmm. And then you look at the walks over 9, jumped up from 2.6 over 9 in 2023 to 3.5, which is just unusable at that point. So there's obvious.
Connor does have a good point there. It's very unusual for guys to go from great to bad like that, but in bad organizations like the Los Angeles Angels, things like that do happen. I mean, there's a reason why Shohei Ohtani departed. Noah Syndergaard didn't work out there.
Reasons for optimism that Canning can get back to pitching like a number 5 starter rather than a guy that shouldn't be making starts for a major league team. And I think you highlighted, some of the not simple tweaks, because there's also things behind the curtain that we're not seeing as well.
Mets pitching lab. We've been hearing that a ton throughout the offseason.
That the Mets will hold close to the vest. But, and this is larger than a Griffin Canning conversation. I think this is just the conversation with the Mets, whoever the number 5 through 9 starters on the team are always going to be in the Stearns era.
You're not going to hit on all of these kind of projects, right? But the more shots you take, I think they're going to have a higher win percentage than not. And when you look at someone like Griffin Canning, you mentioned the Angels, they are regarded as one of the worst pitching development staffs across the sport. And the Mets are emerging as one of the best. So anytime you could take somebody that has shown something in a bad pitching system and put them in a good one, it could breed results.
I could not agree more with the fellows over there. Think about this. Last year, you had every team in the MLB pretty much give up on Luis Severino. Sean Manaea was a project, turned them both into very good starters. Hell, you had guys in their mid-30s like Jose Quintana having great years. And now you see them bringing in the Griffin Canning, who I was not a big fan of, but there's a reason why they gave him $4.5 million after he was cut last year. He got $4.5 million from us. I was scratching my head, but now you're starting to see some of the results throughout spring. Whether or not that translates to the major league level during the season will be, we'll see. But you have him who's producing, and then you have one of my favorite New York Mets pitching prospects in a very long time. And no, it is not Brandon Sproat, but a guy in Nolan McLean who pitched today and was absolutely lights out. I want to show you a video that was created by the Mets development on X. Take a look at his secondary pitches. They are beyond filthy. Let's give it a look. Here is Nolan McLean, the former two-way player that the New York Mets are having be an exclusive starting pitcher, and there's a very good chance we see him at some point this year. Take a look at these secondary pitches here. Absolute filth. Watch that plane. That is a 8-inch slider right there. It starts literally down the middle and is finishing just about on the opposite batter's box. Take a look at it again. Look where the catcher sets up. Outside, bam. Filthy. Next batter starts outside, comes right back over the edge of the plate. Strike 3. And this is my favorite one. Starts out right down the middle of the plate and breaks into the other batter's box. Filthy. Absolutely filthy. Nolan McLean is currently coming in at number 5 on the New York Mets prospect list, and we should definitely be seeing him this year. He struggled a little last year, but I'm expecting him to play up to his current prospect status now to get into the nitty-gritty. There is a big debate right now on who is to get the final roster spot on this New York Mets team. The folks over at SNY had a little debate on it. I have not personally watched it because I wanted to react live with you guys. Let's check it out.
Manage their final roster spot? Well, this is actually kind of an interesting discussion they're having, and I can tell you they don't know the answer to this yet, but it's a couple of high-profile.
That's really interesting what he said. They don't know the answer yet. We are a little over a week away from opening day. It's coming down to the wire, whether or not it's going to be Brett Beatty or Luis Angel Acuna. Let's listen to what Andy says, and I'll give you my remarks.
Younger players and Brett Beatty and Luis Angel Acuna, who would be in that mix. And then really we're talking about replacing Jose Iglesias and replacing Nick Madrigal, who was Iglesias' replacement, who's out for the season now. So it's like, what do you want in your infield? Do you want that extra bat and Beatty, or do you want more the standard thing, which is a guy that can be a backup shortstop and play around a little bit? So, Beatty, I know.
Let's also be fair. Luis Angel Acuna is an absolute speed demon and could probably be a Gold Glove type shortstop right now. So I wouldn't just say he's a defensive replacement. He could hit a little bit, which he showed last year. Yes, he struggled, and I don't expect him to come out the gates firing, but let's be honest. He's way more than just a glove. He is an absolute speed demon. He could be a terror, a late game potential pinch runner for this team, and could easily give a day off at third base, second base, shortstop, and dare I say, put him in the outfield.
I know they're giving him reps at second base. I know he's enjoying it. I know he's a hard worker and learning, but I don't think he's anyone's idea of a backup middle infielder just based on his profile and body type. So do you do that, or do you go with, they have guys in camp like Donovan Walton and Luis De Los Santos, who would be like your classic utility guy? It's tough to start any game, I would think, without a backup shortstop on
the tough part about this is the New York Mets, even though Brett Beatty is going to be 25 years old or is 25 years old, they still want him getting full-time at-bats or near full-time at-bats. That's what I'm hearing, and having him be the backup for a guy like Lindor, who's never going to have a day off. Vientos early on, there's plenty of built-in days off, and he's young enough. And Jeff McNeil is going to be playing every day, so he's not going to be getting a ton of at-bats. And now that there's a DH in the National League, it kind of takes away that pitch hitting opportunity. Now, one thing to watch out for is that DH spot might open up depending on how healthy Brandon Nimmo is going into the year. A lot of people are talking about potentially him starting a lot at DH and having Winker play left field or Marte play left field. But against those tough right-handers, I could see a possibility where Nimmo gets the day off. Maybe you give Brett Beatty that DH position for a day or two, and you allow Jesse Winker to play in left field, because I am all for giving Brandon Nimmo days off early on in the season, because we need him for the long haul. It's not about right now. When I see stats about him running around 80 to 83%, that is very concerning to me, considering we were hearing that he was at approximately 91% not that long ago. So that's one thing that the New York Mets might need to monitor if Brandon Nimmo goes on the IL. We've also seen Brett Beatty take reps in left field in the minor leagues. He supposedly looked pretty smooth out there. Nothing crazy to talk about, but he can make the routine play there, the routine play at third base and at second base, and potentially even at first base, which we saw early on in the offseason. And New York Mets asked him to play a little bit of first base. So maybe he becomes a super utility type player. But again, to Andy's point, I don't see Brett Beatty taking a spot at shortstop to give Lindor a day off. I will say this: in Carlos Mendoza's recent press conference or interview that he conducted, he did talk about potentially Jeff McNeil subbing Lindor out a day or two over at shortstop, which would be a completely different type of defensive alignment than what we're accustomed to. But that is also assuming that Lindor would be injured. We all know Lindor is a workhorse. He's going to play above 150 games for the year, and especially with some built-in days off early in the regular season, I don't expect them to be needing a backup shortstop. But Jeff McNeil is probably their emergency shortstop. I actually think Brett Beatty is going to get the first crack, because Luis Angel Acuna is a little bit younger, obviously a couple of years, and they're going to want him to get full-time at-bats down at AAA and not sit on the bench at the major league level. But let's see what they say.
The roster, in case something happens to Lindor. If something does happen to Lindor, you can bring someone up for the next day. So there's a lot of different ways you can think about it, but Beatty would be a highly unusual choice for these reasons, but one they're considering because he can hit.
And that's what Andy Martino thinks over at SNY. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments, if you agree with him or not. I personally think that Brett Beatty should be the guy to get the first crack. Lindor could play shortstop every single day like he always does. And if he needs a breather, I might try Jeff McNeil over at shortstop a game or two, but I don't think there's going to be many games off. But, that's just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments, whether or not you think Brett Beatty or Luis Angel Acuna should get that spot, and leave a reason. I want to see your guys' reasons. I love going back and forth with you guys, but it's difficult when you just put, boom, I just want Brett Beatty. I'm giving you the reason why Brett Beatty. He could play second base. He could probably play a little bit of first base. He could play third base and play a little bit of left field. And obviously, he's got a projected higher bat than Luis Angel Acuna. He's been killing it in spring training. He's got the power bat working for him. His OPS is very high, but that's all I got for you today. Thanks much. If you guys are still sticking around, make sure you smash that like button, turn those notifications on. We'll continue to bring as much Mets content as we can. Until next time, let's go Mets. Take care.